Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Corey Masters. I'm your customer success manager here at ECI Lasso, and I will be your host today. Basically, just think of me as your Lasso person, your resource, and I'm just here to make sure all our Lasso customers get the most value out of our software. Today's webinar is called The Powerful Pitch, Your Guide to Getting a Yes and Fast by Abby Cornelius. She is the Director of Sales at Dream Finders Homes, and she's amazing. I'm super excited to have her here. But before we get started, we're gonna go through a couple of different notes that we have here. Everyone will be muted for today's call. I'm gonna stay on camera to help Abby with questions. So if you have questions, please don't hesitate to chat them out in the chat. And we also have the questions window too. Please feel free to do that. We love hearing from you, and this is for you. So please ask away. Today's session is recorded, and after the webinar, you'll receive a follow-up email with a survey and with the recording too. We ask that you fill out the survey. That super helps us understand exactly what you as our customers need and want to learn about, and we love putting this up for you as a free resource for you to learn. So please let us know what you want to see and hear from, or who you want to hear from as well. And we encourage that you share the recording with everyone that you think this would be useful for. If you have any issues or problems with listening or hearing us or seeing us, please let us know in the chat window too. We'll try to make sure we help you out as much as we can. As we wait for a couple more people to come in and join us, I'll give you a little bit of background about ECI before I let Abby start her amazing presentation. We are ECI software solutions. We provide integrated cloud-based management solutions across 4 different industries. In our residential home construction division, we have Lasso, which is our CRM, Mark Systems, an ERP and construction management tool. LotView, it's our interactive sitemap tool. InSearch is our interactive design center tool. Build Tools is for custom builders and remodelers, and we also have Bolt, a management tool designed for trade contractors. Our main goal here at ECI is to help small and medium-sized businesses compete and grow, and we do that through our products and also by sharing best practices and providing education to the industry, such as through these webinars. I'm super excited that you're all here. Again, my name is Corey Masters. I will be your host today, and we have Abby here. Abby, are you ready to go?
I am ready to go. Thank you.
Perfect. It's all yours.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Like Corey said, thank you so much for joining us today. And I am going to take you on a journey of crafting your powerful pitch. So I am almost 20 years vet in home building, almost exclusively on the sales side. And I know a thing or two about selling, but when I transitioned into leadership, I realized that maybe I wasn't that great at pitching persuasively to leaders and other departments. And although I could sell a house to a person, something wasn't landing right. And so I spent a lot of time trying to craft a more persuasive pitch. And I think I got it figured out. And I've started sharing it with other folks over the last couple years. And within 24 hours, anytime I share this, I will get a phone call or a text back saying, oh my God, it works. So exciting, Abby. Thank you. So I'm really grateful to share my framework with you today. But let's kind of start at the beginning and let's talk about what are the actual benefits of taking the time to create a powerful pitch? Because a powerful pitch isn't something we wing. It's not, an on-the-fly thing. It does take a little bit more intention, but with intention, we are going to get yeses quicker. Okay, we are going to build trust and credibility because the people that we're talking to are going to know that we've done our homework, right? We are going to inspire confidence. We're going in saying, yes, this is a great decision. Our enthusiasm is going to be transferable, and they're going to take that confidence with them as well. We are going to demonstrate really good problem solving skills, we are going to get action and get results. And ultimately, with a really powerful pitch, it is going to set you apart from your peers. It's going to set you apart from your competition. So keep that in mind. There is a lot of value to taking a pause and really crafting how you want to approach things before we go for an ask. So let's talk about that. When do we actually pitch? Think about it for a second. Have you made a pitch in the last, I don't know, 6 months? Corey, have you pitched to anybody lately?
I think I pitch to my kids every day.
Yeah. Okay. I think I
But
get pitched to by my kids. I think I get pitched to. Hey, mom, can I have a popsicle this morning?
yeah. I know, work related, yes, we definitely do a lot of that.
Yeah, so we are kind of knowingly or unknowingly pitching all the time. Some of the common things where I found I was pitching mostly professionally was for additional support. Maybe I needed an extra set of hands on a project I was working on. Maybe I needed additional staff. Obviously, a sale, that's the ultimate pitch in the new home sales world, right? For OSCs, maybe it's pitching for an appointment, right? That's the same path that we're on. Maybe you want to challenge a policy and suggest a change. Maybe you just simply need approval and buy-in and your leader's stamp to move something through the process. That could be financial, right? Maybe I need money for a project. Or maybe it's the bigger, scarier conversations of I want to raise or a promotion. Those are pitches too. And those are things in all of these situations, they're things that we need to go into, like I said, prepared and really considering, what do I hope to gain from this? But you also want to ask, who am I pitching to? And this was a big shift for me. So pitching to customers was very emotional, right? We always say get to the buyer's story, dig into their situation. And so I felt like I was really good at emotionally pitching. But when I found out in leadership, now I'm pitching to division presidents, area presidents, land, construction, not always as emotional as the sales side. And so I was lacking something in those pitches to really hit their hot buttons. I knew how to hit a customer's hot button, but did I know how to hit these other individuals' hot buttons? So before crafting your pitch, I want you to think, who am I pitching to and what might be their motivator in this situation? Because any good sales pitch, which all of these are sales pitches, involves what's in it for them, not what's in it for you. All right, so keep that in mind. So before we get into the framework, I want to share with you the tale of two pitches. So this is the legend of one of my communities, Creek Park. So I was a sales manager for, oh my gosh, probably like 3 years at this point in time, but I was new to the company I was with, and it was my first new community opening, and my VP of sales challenged me with getting an average of $30,000 lot premiums on all the lots in the community. Now, this is a neighborhood that was in an outlying market. This is pre-COVID, where we weren't really seeing kind of crazy prices, but they really wanted to maximize out there. So I'm doing a lot walk with land, construction, and sales, and we're going, and I'm feeling good, right? We got some pretty cul-de-sacs, we got some basement lots, and then we turn the corner and there is a retaining wall. It does not look as good as the one in this picture. It didn't have a fence at the top. It did not have grass. It actually had very tall weeds all over the pads. And the retaining wall above it was a mountain of dirt. And in North Carolina, we have beautiful red clay. So this retaining wall was washed over. It was a gray retaining wall washed over with red clay stains. I know, right? That's, yeah, Corey, thank you. Thank you, yeah. And I'm just standing there and I'm like, okay. And it was about a 2.5-story retaining wall that backed up at least a half a dozen home sites. And so it was massive, and it was an eyesore. We don't have houses to break anything up at this point in time. So I'm just staring at this thinking, who in the world would pay $30,000 for these lots? Like, I'm in a really bad state. And so I did a half-baked pitch, a pitch on the fly, which I don't encourage. And I was just like, oh, land, can we get that power wash? Can we put some trees? Like, I'm just basically like rattling off all this stuff to do. And he's like, absolutely not. Like, we're done. This is the handoff to you guys. And he's like, we don't have money for that. And that's part one of the story. Because if that's all I did and I stopped there, what do you think would have happened? Like, Corey, what do you think would happen? I just, yep, okay, we're just going to leave it that way and try to sell it.
Uh, would sit there for a very long time, and then maybe you would have had a chance to lower the lot premium after a very, very long time.
Yeah, we're going to give it away or we're going to lose time, which in home building, y'all, neither of those things are good for us. Speed and profit are our favorite things. So we'll revisit this story after we talk about how to craft a better pitch. And I'll tell you what?
A cliffhanger. You can leave
yes, a cliffhanger. This is actually one of those times where I did like a self-check. I was like, oh, you didn't pitch well. So I'll tell you what I did to fix it and where we went. But I want you to kind of get a little better feel. So when we get into these pitches, there's 3 possible outcomes. Okay, we are going to get a yes, which is amazing, great, that's the goal. Sometimes you get a quick no, and sometimes you just get peppered with more and more questions. I guess we can't have the back and forth, but Corey, I'll have you be my back and forth girl. Do you feel like you are like yes lady, no lady, or more questions when you pitch?
I would say most of the time in my previous role, it was the more questions. Like as an OSC is always like, tell me more. How does like in that case, how does the lot look like? What's behind it? Can you put trees? Can you do this? Can you do that?
Yes. So more questions is very typical. But I worked for a boss who I think really helped me build my persuasively pitching skills, who was a no guy. It wasn't like even up for debate. If he didn't think I like gave him enough information, it was just a simple no. And and so I remember like 3 months into working with him, I said to him, and I'm persistent, right? In sales, we're paid to be persistent. So if I get a no, I didn't like it, I'd try again. And then maybe he'd say yes, or maybe it was like the 3rd time he'd say yes, because I'm not going to stop. But it was really frustrating to me that I would ask the same questions 3 times before I got a yes. And so one day I asked him, I said, why are you a no at first? And then you're a yes by the 2nd or 3rd time. So this is also really good information for you guys to not accept a no at first. And he said, he's a division president, right? So he's got all these departments coming to him. He goes, I get a lot of asks in a day, and half of them are just to make life easier. They're not necessarily truly necessary for the business. So when you bring it up again, I know it's still important. So there is persistence in pitching, okay? So don't ever accept a no, just like in sales, right? We got to get our mojo going. But then he would also often ask more questions. And so he sent me to a leadership training, like weekend workshop type thing. And during it, they were talking about how leaders think. So this kind of goes back to who are you pitching to? And one of the little mini workshops that we did during that retreat was cost risk analysis. And I realized in that moment, and they were talking like more high level financial type stuff, but I realized in that moment that my pitches never included cost and risk analysis. They always included the feel, right? That like, oh, this is why I want this, or this is exciting, or we need to do this, or, that sales energy. And mostly they included what's in it for me, because that's, the agenda. But I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my gosh, if this is the way that they're thinking about every decision, I got to change my pitches. I need to start adding more color to speak to who they are, speak to what their motivators is. And then I learned over time that using this same framework, it works with everybody, not just leaders. But that's why I love having a framework, because it tends to work across the board. So we're going to get into that. But I want you to think about when you've pitched, what has worked. So everybody right now, take a pen and a piece of paper. Think about when you've gotten a yes recently. Maybe it was for a job. Maybe it was just something you pitched to your boss. Maybe it was for a raise, whatever your pitch was. Maybe it was with your kids, right? I mean, I feel like I hardly win those pitches. Maybe I need to get more into their motivation. It's a food motivation and ice cream motivation. But think about when you did it, what worked. If you want to put it in the chat, absolutely put it in the chat. I'd love to hear what's working for you guys, and we'll see how much of that actually lends to the framework itself. But I want you to think about that, because for me, what I realized worked after having that heart-to-heart and then going through that training was that I am an emotional seller. I'm an emotional buyer. So I sell the way I like to buy. But what I realized in that moment was that if you really want to have a powerful pitch without fully knowing your audience, you need to do what I call the feel and the real. You need to keep the emotion because that does matter. That's the value, the impact, right? But you also need data and you need stats. And that's that cost risk analysis that leaders are typically running with. All right.
I have a perfect example if you want.
Yeah, go for it. Absolutely.
So I'm like you. I'm Latina. So like everything's emotion. Everything's like, I'm just going to tell you how I feel and hopefully you'll understand. But, and she's actually watching the webinar line right now with Amanda Martin from DOSC. Back when we were both OSCs, we understood that we were losing a lot of phone calls between 4 and 5 when we were driving home because we had to work from an office every single day. And we went to explain to our boss, hey, can we work from home or can we leave early? And of course, initially he just said, no, you just want to leave early. And then we were like distraught, like, oh my goodness, they don't understand. And then we understood our boss at the time was very type A, like, I need this, and this is why you need it, and why do you want it, and what's the result. So then we went back and pulled data from our call rail and said, look, these are all the phone calls we're missing. We can't take care of our customers. And then at the end of it, he's like, oh, sure, come in early, leave early so you don't miss traffic. So you miss traffic. And then we're like, yay, we won the argument. But like, it took us a couple of weeks to be like, what really does he need to tell us yes?
Yeah, that is like the, okay, class over, like Corey wrapped it up in a bow. That's exactly what we need to do because, well, two things happen there, right? You knew why it was important. We just failed to communicate it properly the first time, right? But then understanding, okay, I need to speak his or her language, that changes the whole game, right? And that's why we do have to make sure that we're taking a little bit of time in advance just to do some prep work, which we'll talk about in a second. But I want to introduce you to the actual framework, which is called Ask Victor. So here's Victor. Hey, Victor. He's the cutest little image I could find on Canva to represent Victor. So he won the award. But Ask Victor is a combination of feel and real and a way for you to prepare for any pitch you're going to face. And so this is it. So grab your little cell phones, take a screenshot, whatever you need to do for this one. You're going to present your ask. You're going to talk about the value, the impact, which those are kind of like the feels, right? The cost, the time, the others, and risk, which is more the real data. Okay, I'm going to break it down a little bit more for you. So you're going to present your ask. Don't bury the lead, right? We should ask confidently, right? You know, here's what I'm looking for. Here's why. Here's the value to them saying yes. You want to build this up. Again, if you can throw data anywhere in there, it's always better. Then you want to get into the impact. What's the impact to the business if they say yes? Okay, this is when you're pitching to leaders. Now, if you're pitching to a customer, just switch it around, right? What's the impact to their personal life? Right? If you're doing it to your kid, what's their impact to their like chill Saturday? My dad used to do this. He's like, if you clean your rooms, we'll go get ice cream. I'm like, oh, good job, Dad. Like, good hook, right? And then cost. Are there any costs associated with this decision? If there's not, share that. If there is, let's be clear about it. Is there a timeline that we need to share? Okay, make sure you're putting that in there. And then this is really crucial. Others. Who else may need to be involved in this decision? So once I started getting a little bit like craftier with these pitches, I added in the cost and risk after that initial meeting that I attended. So I was doing, you know, the emotional value impact. I added in cost and risk, but then I realized that when I was getting berated with more questions, it was normally followed up by, well, what do you need me to do? Or who's taking lead on this project? Or how long is this going to take? So those were like common questions I kept getting back, and it's slowing the process, right? So my goal of this pitch is to get you that yes quicker. So if you know this information or if you can validate it in advance, these are all the things you need to add in there. And then last but certainly not least is risk. And I want you to think of risk of what's the risk if we say no. Not what's at risk if we do that. That's the cost, the time, that's the risk of saying yes to this decision. I want you to think about what's the risk of saying no, right? So Corey, with your example, the risk of saying, nope, you guys, that's your commute time. The risk was we're missing all these leads.
Mm-hmm.
If we continue to do this, we're missing 25% of our leads in a day during this drive time, whatever that is, right? So what's the risk of saying no to the ask? And then last but not least, close, right? Ask, yep, we good? Is this it? Or do you approve? All those good things. So I want to kind of walk you through a couple of, well, I want to finish my story, but I want to remind you that oftentimes these pitches do require that you do some research first. So just like you got to know, then you had to go back and pull your data. Sometimes we want to pull data. If you're going to ask for a raise, you should pull some data, right? What were your stats last year? What did you contribute to the organization? What were your numbers, right? If you're going to ask for a promotion, what maybe tasks could you take on or take off your boss's plate to validate taking on this promotion, right? Do your research. So when we go back to my lovely story of Creek Park, the legend of Creek Park, I paused. He gave me a hard no, and it felt like it was not open for debate by any means.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I said, and this guy's like super nice, so I knew I could at least have a conversation, it was approachable. But I said, okay, time out real quick. First of all, any of you, I don't know what facets of home building everybody on here is from, but expensive means different things to different people.
Mm-hmm.
So when he said to me, it's too expensive, I need to clarify that, right? That's like sales 101. When there's a question or a word that somebody says you don't understand, don't assume, don't put your filter on it. And so that's kind of where I started, because I'm thinking, oh my God, I have to charge $30,000 lots. And by the way, I hadn't even shared that information with him at this point. I'm just doing my thing on the side, right? And so I'm staring there, I'm like, okay, well, how much do you think it would cost? And he's like, oh, well, power washing, it would probably be like, I don't know, $3,000 for the whole wall, some landscaping to stabilize it at the top so it doesn't keep doing that, maybe like another $5,000. And he's going on. I'm like, okay, so let's call it $10,000, like high side. He's like, yeah, it'd probably be about $10,000. I was like, okay. Well, here's why I'm asking and sharing with him, like, hey, I'm challenged with $30,000 per lot. We can make that up on, we can make up the $10,000 spend if I can actually justify these premiums. And so then he's standing there staring, I'm standing, he goes, well, I still don't have the budget for it. And I'm like, well, I do, like with these $30,000 premiums. So I'm standing there and I was like, hey guys, like if I get my VP of sales approval for sales to take the hit for the cost, are you guys willing to put in, like, coordinate it for me, right? Like you have the vendors on site and everything. Would you coordinate all of that for me? And do you think we can get it done in 2 weeks before we launch? And they're all like, yep. Now listen, this is an internal pre-pitch to the people I need to help be the others, but I still have to pitch this to my boss too, right? But now I know the cost, I know the time, I know that land and construction is going to help me. I know we can get this done. And then I craft this powerful pitch to my boss, which can be done in an email if they're a busy person or a phone call, right? And it's just simply, hey, Jody, I'm out here at Creek Park. I know you want $30,000 per lot. I need some help on some enhancements to the community. Right now, it's looking really rough on these 6 lots, and I shoot her a picture. Hey, look at your text real quick. This is what I'm up against, right? And I just talked to construction and land. They think it's about $10,000 to get it clean, landscaped, and they can get it done by our launch if you give us the green light today. Are we good to roll with this? Yes, on the spot. Quick, let's go, right? But had I called her and just been like, I think I need like 10 or 20 grand. I don't know how much it's going to be. I don't know when we can get it done. Do you think I should do that? She's probably gonna be like, no, just figure it out. Just sell some houses, So you've got to craft these things. And we actually ended up crushing it at that community. My salesperson was way bought and way on board, and we did phenomenal. So it turned out really well, but that's the power of persistence. It's the power of asking a few questions and validating and putting all of that information together for the ultimate decision maker, where you make it so easy for them that a no seems silly. And there's no more questions to ask, right? We've talked about the cost, the time, the risk, right? We've built up such enormous value. So let's go through a couple more examples. And I want you guys to start thinking about a pitch that you have upcoming and how maybe you can utilize Ask Victor to craft it. And we can go back to that screen too. But here's an example. You know, I would ask this question a lot to my boss. Hey, I need some extra landscaping at Happy Acres. And I'd be like, I would just get a no. Like, no, what does that even mean, right? They're busy, they're in their office, you're just asking for money. No. But with Victor, and I love bullet points, guys, really, if you're going to communicate via email, do not write multiple paragraphs. You lose your leaders and you lose business partners in too much text. And I would honestly even highlight it like you see here. Even with my team, when I communicate, I highlight the big things that I want to stand out. So instead of saying just, hey boss, can I have some extra landscaping? It might look like, I really want to update the community entrance. So it's specific as to where I want that. It'll create a much better first impression. We've got our grand opening happening in 2 weeks. I'm bringing in 100 leads. I got a quote, it's $2,000. It's going to do the flower beds. It's going to get me some, new paint, signage, lights, all that good stuff. And they can have it done in time if I say yes this week, right? So there's some urgency there, there's a timeline, and then I commit to coordinating with the landscapers. I'm not putting it out into the universe and hoping somebody else does the work. I'm committing to taking care of it. And then I wrap it up with my risk is my fear is if we don't do this, our next phase launch may not be as successful, right? It just doesn't look great. Do you approve? And then I've put in there 2 bonus points, right? So not everybody sees what you're seeing. And I feel like if you can touch all the sentences, and people learn differently. So here's a little mini lesson in adult learning. Some people are visual, some people are auditory, some people are doers. Like they have to see, touch, feel. So if you can hit on all those senses, you're going to have a greater impact in your pitch also. So put it in writing, include a picture. And if I can pitch it, maybe they can sense some stress in my voice if I actually say it instead. And this will get me a yes, because he or she doesn't have to figure out how much it costs. They don't have to do the work to get the landscapers to say yes and approve. It's easy, breezy, beautiful cover girl. And then here's another example. And I want you guys to know, I have taught this to my team. I have taught my team to know how to pitch to me, to make sure that they're validating on all of those things also. So I used to get consistent texts from salespeople. Hey, can I get an extra $5,000 this weekend, boss? I'm like, for what? Like, for who? For what? I don't know. I'm like, you got a buyer? Like, there's so many more questions. I'm not just going to quickly say yes to that, right? Every house is a different and unique situation. Every buyer is a different and unique situation. So if one of my employees was to say to me today, hey, boss, can I get an extra $5,000? My answer would be no. Or I might pepper them with a bunch of other questions. Who? What lot? What are they thinking? Are they pre-qualified, right? There's all this stuff. But if you teach other people in your organization to also communicate this way, you're going to speed up your entire business cycle, because now my team, well, actually created an offer form, but this would work too, right? So it would be, hey, I have a buyer for home site 44. This is an actual buyer on an actual lot, right? Like we're talking business now. Right now, they're asking for $450. It's at $455. It's only a $5,000 price concession. They are going to close in the next 45 days on this sitting inventory. They agreed to sign today. There's a lot of urgency in this. There's a lot of timeline on this. The agent's on board. So this is the others, right? They've been pre-approved. So we know we're good with an agent. We know we're good with lending. And then here's my fear. What's the risk? If we don't accept this offer, we're going to be facing a bigger ask with the next buyer, and our closing timeline is approaching, and we're going to have carry costs on this house. Do you approve? And then bonus points, attach a pre-qualification letter. And then if I had to submit this up to my boss, I would attach a margin report so he could see the impact to margin. So taking it to that next level, knowing your audience. Does that kind of make sense? Oh yeah, I get claps. Thank you. Thank you. But this is a lot harder to say no to. And I think sometimes what we assume is when we have something that's really important to us, we know all the details and we kind of assume that they do too. And now that when I moved from sales to leadership, I didn't realize that my leader has their hand in so many things that you kind of lose that individualized attention, right? So if I'm a salesperson in a community, home site 44, I'm thinking about it all day long because I'm in the neighborhood, you know, so on and so forth. My leader may not be thinking, when does home site 44 close? Like, is it red? Like, they don't have all that stuff as quickly accessible in their brain as you do. So spell it out. Make it so easy for them to say yes and so hard for them to say no. And you're gonna win like every time. Seriously, it's foolproof. Another reason why I stress doing your research is because sometimes you'll realize it's a bad pitch. Okay. Have you ever got really excited about something and then you bring it up and then it's like, well, it doesn't work because of this, this, and this. You're like, well, crap, I kind of wish I didn't even bring it up in the first place. Or you know what, I didn't really think about that. I have found that using this as kind of my guidepost helps me know if it's a yes or no before I even ask. It's kind of like that old adage, like you probably don't propose to somebody without knowing if they're going to say yes or no. There's probably been a bunch of like little conversations along the way, right? So I've done this several times, and I've got a great example. So I had a customer who we installed the wrong floors in their house. Yeah, not great. It was just a paperwork issue. It just didn't get caught, but it was like a big color difference and it looked odd. But after talking to them, I realized that time frame was like the absolute most important thing to them. And my office kept saying, let's just do the right thing and rip out the hardwoods and all this, like, we just want to do it right. And I'm like, I mean, yes, on paper, that's the right thing to do, but I don't know if that's the right thing for these people because they cannot delay their closing. They're out of their house. They need to get in it. And so I asked them, I said, you know, talk to me about like what the most important thing to you is before I pitched what I was being told to offer them as a solution. And they're like, you know, any solution outside of delayed settlement is really what we want. So we ended up giving them money to compensate so they could go get rugs and try to bring the decor together in their house and all of those things. And they were really, really grateful and happy for that. And honestly, it probably cost us less money. It still kept the house closing on time. So it was a win-win situation. But that's a good example of you need to have all your facts before you pitch, because I could have went to them and said, we're going to rip out your floors. Then they would have said, no, the timing doesn't work. And then I got to go back to my boss and we're bouncing and bebopping back and forth. It's slowing down everything. It's like mud in the pipes, right? So you really want to make sure you're validating, you're asking those good questions in advance, and then you're bringing it back around to the framework. And then sometimes you'll say, I'm not going to pitch, right? If I want to ask for a raise, but I maybe didn't hit my goals this year, and maybe I don't feel like I really contributed, and I'm not really sure how I can show up better next year, maybe it's not the right time to ask for a raise, right? Or maybe I want to ask for a promotion, but there's no more new people to manage. There's no more anything to take on. It might not be the right time. You can also use this same, I'm going to go back so you guys can see the framework real quick. You can use this in sales interactions too. So I know there are so many wonderful sales training programs out there that give you, you know, really great tools to create a powerful sales experience, but you can use this as your close, right? So, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I think it's time to make this house yours. You know, you guys have been living in that home for the last 2 years, and it has shrunk and shrunk and shrunk as your family has grown and grown and grown. When you came in, you said you wanted to stay around 450. We were able to do that with the Hamilton floor plan, and you really wanted to get in before the end of the year for the holidays. And as you know, it's ready now. It's waiting for you. You know, your realtor thinks it's a good deal. You guys have been pre-approved. Your mom and dad came out and saw it. Everybody's on board. My fear is if you don't make this decision today, this house isn't going to be here, you know, over the weekend because it's such a great price and it's in such a great location within the community. Are you guys ready to make it yours? That's the real, that's the feel, that's the emotion, that's their logical side too, right? Some people are more logical than others. It can help you create a really, really powerful close. So if you go through this, I want you to think for a minute about what maybe you typically miss. So think about that framework of Ask Victor while I scooch on through these slides. And what do you miss? Corey, is there a part that you feel like you often miss?
Let me think. Well, it depends. Most of the time I'm pitching to my husband that I want to get a cat, and I forget the rest. he doesn't like cats, and the
Okay.
risk of him not wanting to keep the cat forever. So I feel like I
Yeah.
just have to get in his head and understand what will be the risk of not getting a cat for our
Yeah.
family. But I feel like maybe that's I'm very positive, so I feel like maybe I just don't see the risk part of it because I'm just like, let's do this, we're gonna be happy, everything's great, and I just
Yeah.
tend to not see the negative side of things or
Yeah.
what could go wrong. So that's
Yeah.
the part that I forget.
So yeah, that's good feedback, right? We all have our tendencies. Some of us go positive, some of us go negative, some of us kind of like just like to leave it aloof, right? Just by our nature. But yeah, adding in that risk element might feel a little uncomfortable because that's kind of that harder close, that bigger punch, but it should be genuine, right? Like I am genuinely worried that my customers will miss out if they don't buy. If I think it's a good fit and because I've had it happen, right? Or maybe I didn't push somebody or didn't explain it clear enough and somebody comes in tomorrow and buys that house, customer comes back the next day and they're like, what do you mean it's gone? Like you are doing people a service when you explain the risk. And I think that we too often aren't willing to maybe go to that, which is the circumstantial urgency. So we all have personal urgency, right? You want a cat, you want me happy, honey, don't you? Like there's all of that, but there might be a circumstance, behind it too that might make it more beneficial. Maybe you're lonely or your kids are getting big and they don't want to play with you anymore and you need a little snuggle thing. Like there could be more to it. So don't forget that 1-2 punch and making sure you're not adding in a little extra risk. For me, it's just really often that lack of validation. I feel like sometimes I get highly emotional and I might jump the gun and ask for something because I'm passionate or I see an opportunity. So for me, it's that intentional pause to make sure I've gotten the data to support it too, for sure. All right. Any other thoughts or questions about kind of the overall framework and how we can do this better?
Let's see. Here's the question. Oh no, sorry. It was a chat from earlier saying that they're loving what you're saying.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, put them in the chat. And what I want you to do right now is I want you to think about when you're going to use this. I guarantee every single person on this call, you are pitching multiple times a day. We may be doing it on the fly. We may be more intentional about it. We may have a big like formal pitch coming up. But think about the next time you have to pitch. And I want you to sit down and I want you to use Ask Victor. I want you to write out that bold, powerful, confident, here's what I need, and follow it up with the value, the impact, the cost, the time, the risk. Do your research if you need it, and then have a confident, gain agreement at the end. Are we aligned? I love are we aligned with my boss. That's such an easy one. It's like not even asking for approval. It's just like, are we on the same page? Are we aligned? And then it's a yes, and we're good to go. And here's the unexpected benefit of this. If you do this really well and you do it often enough with somebody in your circle that you deal with regularly, you don't always have to do it. Eventually, they'll get to know the way that you think and you've built that trust and credibility that the next time I go to my boss and I need some landscaping, I can simply say, hey, boss, can I have some money for landscaping? I don't have to validate it all out because he knows the way I'm thinking. He knows I'm going to take, or she knows that I'm going to take care of it, right? So this is a really good also like extra layer when you're new to a team or maybe with a new leader or a new team member to make sure that everybody knows how you're thinking and to see that you're thinking very professional, very high level, and very business minded when it comes to these pitches.
Okay, we have a question here from Diana. It says, how do you approach a situation where you've received a verbal yes and there isn't a follow through?
That's a really good question. So that's why I like the others. That's why we need to add in that who's doing what when portion, right? So if you start adding in that who's doing what when portion, then you have the ability to take control and hold people accountable. So I always make sure I add that to my pitches. It might say like, hey, I need you to do this and I need, construction to do that. Or are we all on board? Yes. And then I'm taking over that project. I am a little bit of a control freak and I don't normally like to let things that are important to me go into other people's hands. The only time where it may not be in your control is something like a raise or a promotion, right? Because that 100% is now in their court. And that is more of a strategic positioning when you leave that conversation of when can I expect to hear something next? so that then you have permission to follow up in 2 weeks and say, hey, how's it going? How's it tracking? Oh, I haven't gotten with HR yet. Okay, when is it reasonable for me to follow up? So that you kind of have that open door to help close the loop. I hope that helps.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Let's see. I have one here. You've done your pitch, but you got to know, how do you come back with a new pitch?
How do you come back with what?
With a new pitch.
Oh, yeah. So if you came back and you got, well, first of all, if you get a no, you should always feel free to ask, what did I miss or why not? And hopefully that will give you the hot button that you missed, and then you can recraft it and come back. Again, on like the sales side, sometimes as time ticks by, things become more urgent. So you can always feel free to say, hey, I want to revisit this. And you can just sometimes do the exact same pitch again if you feel like you validated it, and you'll get a yes. Because sometimes people are like my old boss and they just want to know that it's important to you. And if you give up too soon, they're like, they didn't really care. They weren't that passionate about it. But really the most important thing is to ask, why not? Right? Just like if I asked for a promotion or interviewed and I didn't get a job, I would ask for feedback, right? Like, well, what was I missing? What could I do differently? You can do the exact same thing for your pitch. What this will do is maybe it won't get you a yes for that thing, but it might set you up for better success next time because now you know your audience a little bit better, right? Like I had one boss that was just, he didn't really care so much about margin on houses as he cared about hitting and exceeding sales goals. Where I've had other bosses who are really hot on margin and they don't care about pace. So I would craft my pitches to whatever their hot buttons were. So you might just not have hit a hot button, or you may not fully understand why it isn't valuable now, and is it something we could revisit later? So you can always say that too. If you get a no at the end of the pitch and you ask, why not now? And they say it's a timing thing, then you could say, well, when do you think I could bring this up again? When would it make sense for us to revisit it? But it's not taking no as defeat, because in that moment you want to just like run out of the room and pretend like you never even asked. But you got to kind of stick in there and stick with your confidence that you felt like this was a good thing to ask and try to facilitate it along.
Yeah, I love that. I think sometimes for me, ego and like pride can get in the way of being like you said, like just run away and pretend you never did this. Like just forget about it. I forget I even asked, like go run away. But I love that.
Well, and I've seen a lot of people do that when they pitch to say that they want to get promoted. And I really want to talk about that for a moment, because I think this is where there's like a misinterpretation between how we hear from our leaders when maybe it's a no or it's a not right now versus what they're really trying to say to us. And I've been told no more than I care to admit in my career. And sometimes it was no, I don't think you're ready now, or no, I really want to see improvement in this area. And sometimes I took that as like, they just don't want me, it's never going to work. But in all actuality, now being on the other side of these conversations, it's often maybe we want to see a little bit more hunger. We want to see a little bit more drive. We want to see you say, I don't accept that. I think I'm really good. I think I'm a great candidate. And what can I do? And what I've really noticed throughout my career is that promotions go to the persistent. I think almost anybody, if you think of even yourself, the job that you're in now, did it come easy, or was it a gift of persistence? I mean, I interviewed multiple times for a sales leader job before I actually got one, right? It doesn't often happen the first time. In sales, I've gotten no's way more than I've gotten yeses, like by whatever. I think I have a conversion rate when I was selling of like, 20%. So 80% of the time I'm getting no's, right? So I think we just need to give ourselves a reminder that when it comes to these bigger, more complicated things like job changes, interviews, raises, promotions, be persistent. Show your value. Don't expect it. Like nobody likes an entitled employee. Show your value, present it well, and keep asking for it. And then if at the end of the day you just feel like it's never going to happen, it's just not that organization, then do something about it.
I love that so much.
Yeah. Any other questions? Anything else I can help with?
I don't see any other questions on here. We did get a question about if this is recorded, and yes, it is. You'll be able to hear everything Abby said in the recording. So we'll definitely send that after we get off the webinar today and it gets processed and everything, and we'll send you a survey too. Abby, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite social media platform is LinkedIn. So find me on there. You can shoot me a message on there. I try to check in pretty regularly. You can also email me, abby@abbycornelius.com. Happy to answer any questions. And y'all have homework because I am a trainer at heart. So your homework is to craft your next pitch. If you want to send it to me for review, I would love that. I would be so geeked out to have homework to review in my inbox that you would spark joy in me. But I also want to hear if and when you do it, did it work and didn't it? And if not, let's workshop it. I really truly want to help any of you who feel like you're preparing for something to feel like you've got, the skills and tools that you need. This is an art form and it will get better with time. You'll get quicker with it with time. And then Corey, I actually have a 1-page PDF that has this. Do you want me to send that to you? Can you send that out with the recording?
Yes, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I'll send that to you guys. That way you guys can have the framework kind of sitting on your desk or sitting in a file cabinet. You can pull it out whenever you want. That way you don't have to try to save your screenshot in your phone either.
Perfect. That's what I was doing. I was taking pictures of the screen before.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Obviously, this is something I love, and I think it is a secret skill that will help all of you, no matter what role, industry, anything that you're in. I need to craft better pitches for my kids. That's my takeaway here. Thank you, Corey. I need to win some of those pitches, maybe not cave so much.
Right, it's so hard.
But yes, it's a beautiful skill set that can help really speed things up for you and your company overall.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time. We'll send this over as soon as it's processed and I get your PDF that people can download. And please fill out the survey so we can know exactly what you're looking for in our upcoming webinars. And thank you all for your time today.
Bye.
Bye.